This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome, everybody, to the IPAC Canada webinar, Catch It, the Social Media Bug. The webinar is designed to give you information on the value of promoting infection prevention and control through social media, particularly Twitter and LinkedIn. We would like to thank the Clorox company for sponsoring this webinar. Their generous support has made it possible to produce these webinars for our members and colleagues. Our presenter today is Barley Chironda, who is the IPAC Canada Social Media Manager. He is the current president of our chapter IPAC Greater Toronto, and he has recently started a new position as the Infection Control Specialist with Clorox Canada. I would like very much to welcome Barley, and please proceed. Thanks, Barley.
Thank you, Jerry. And thanks, Doug, for the quick orientation on how to use the system. Good morning, everyone, and I think good afternoon in certain parts, as well as general hello, depending wherever you are all from. I would just like to start off with a disclaimer. I think Jerry has already given a little bit of a background about myself. I'm an infection control specialist currently in Clorox Canada, which also happens to be the sponsor currently. But however, for this talk, I'm doing it solely in the capacity as the IPAC social media manager. So I think the agenda for today really is going to give an overview of what social media is. I'm going to talk a bit about the importance of social media, and I want to try and focus a bit on Twitter and LinkedIn, and that's a bit of a deliberate reason, and I'll talk a bit about why that's the case as we go through. I want to draw attention how these particular platforms of social media are critical to infection prevention and control and overall general communication, especially in the time that we live these days. Last but not least, I'll draw attention to some thought leaders and people that are already using social media effectively, because I think in any particular case, it's important to show that you're not alone. There's many other people already out there using social media. So that's going to be my whole thing. So I think just starting off from the very beginning, I figured let me give a bit of a timeline in terms of what has happened over the last little while. Because I think normally when we talk about timelines, we talk about when infection prevention and control first started. And most of the time we talk about Semmelweis and the hand hygiene movement from back in the days in Austria. And then we talk about like a lot of other things that have happened as far as significant hallmark events in infection prevention control. Social media also has an equal timeline, and depending on who you ask, they all place it at different points. So I'd like to draw attention, like in this particular timeline, that in 1971, for example, right about here, email started playing around as far as use. 1979, 84, there were a couple of different platforms that was starting to happen as well, with culminating 1991, where there was a lot of personal websites, discussions, chat groups, and so on. But 1995, you're seeing a lot of like social media platforms start to kick in. So one of the first ones was called Classmates. That's where you could get to see all the people that you went to high school with, and all aimed at just creating those social networks. But right now, I think what's becoming very interesting is 1998 to 2004, we started seeing a bit of a movement. People are more interested in information. So you're looking at, if you're into cats, you want to know more about cats. If you're into hand washing, you want to know more about hand washing. So there's now more information that's being specialized around this time, culminating in Wikipedia, where people can actually provide insight as well. But what's happened now is between 2005 and beyond, we're now getting into the real push of social media, which is an interesting time because it's now really driven by user-generated content. And this is critical for everyone on the call to really take attention to this, because user-generated content means that everyone is playing a role to drive the information that is out there. So if it's a field of infection prevention control, it calls to action that all people in infection prevention control are participating in that knowledge sharing. So if you don't have these players from infection prevention control, then that void is filled by certain other people that are either not certified and don't have the necessary level of knowledge and information to share. So this is critical to know. Furthermore, there's a couple of different social media definitions that you will see. I like two particularly. One happens to be from Wikipedia, which also happens to be a social media platform, by the way. And one of the things that they describe social media as is the online technologies and practices that people share, that people use to share opinions, insights, experiences, perspectives with each other. And I think key here is sharing of opinions and insights with each other. So you're really looking at how to go about doing that. And everywhere I go, infection prevention and control, people do that really, really well. But unfortunately, the conversation does not seem to be happening much on social media right now. Another definition that I love is, once again, social media is the use of tools and in promoting sharing and discussing. Once again, experiences comes up. So if you're looking at any of these definitions, key things coming out of here is there's tools, but sharing and discussing are the key elements that are required here. So you see that a lot, and that's something that's key to take away from you. So there's been an evolution really in media in general. And I think one of the things that started off, and most people are still stuck in this stage, where you have websites, right? Websites have general information. They are just giving you that information without the opportunity for the user to feed back what their opinions are. Slowly, this has evolved into blogs and forums. So a lot of blogs now allow that opportunity for the user to give feedback. So there's a mutual back and flow between the source of the information and the user. This is a valuable piece of information because it allows that dialogue back and forth. But what we're seeing now is, with the use of social media, is you're now allowing more dynamic and more flexible flow of information all around. And this is really where we're spending most of our time. But unfortunately, most social media, most infection prevention control, most of the communication is still occurring in this stage, where we don't really keep in touch with the user and the end user. As a result, we don't create that necessary dialogue. All this to say is, I'm trying to create a platform so that you guys understand where we're coming from and really where the move is going to. So just going to cross over, and this is a picture that I really love, and I've used it at many social media presentations. And what I really love about this image is it really tries to explain to you what some of those social media platforms, which, remember, are just the technology elements, are replacing on your desk. So before, for example, you used to have the Rolodex. I'm going to click on my little pointer here. Before, you used to have the Rolodex on your desk right about here, but that's been replaced now with LinkedIn, which we're going to talk more in greater depth about today and how to go about using that. So instead of having all your contacts on a fixed place on your desk somewhere, you can now keep them in your phone, you can now keep them on your computer, and they are mobile with you on that LinkedIn platform. And interestingly, there's other platforms as well, like you've got like Instagram right here, which is replacing those pictures that you used to have. So you can now capture all those images and have them on your phone. You can share them with people. You can have those discussions. WordPress replaces the notepad that you used to have, where you could keep your notes on. So you're now having a situation where you can now blog and keep all your articles and stuff like that on WordPress, which is a blogging article. This one speaks a bit about Twitter, where any random thought that you have, before you could just keep it to yourself. But now I can have a random thought right now about, oh, I think hand hygiene is something that's critically important and people should be washing their hands. I put that out there. Somebody going through looking under hand washing then sees me as a person that is interested in hand washing, and then before you know it, you're now having a conversation. So those post-it notes that were previously a private thing just for yourself can now be a source of discussion and generate more traction and cause that necessary dialogue. What I find funny with this image is, like, this is a picture of the outside world with the birds flying and the sky and the nice luscious thing. That's been replaced with YouTube. Now you see people actually using YouTube as a platform to watch cats all day, watch videos all day, and this actually just gives it a little bit of a negative connotation to social media in the context that people are now spending most of their time just watching screens and so on. But yeah, so that's something that I love, because it actually just summarizes a bit of the social media. But I think let's switch gears a little bit here and just prove a case. Okay, so what is happening in the literature? What are the papers saying? And is there value to social media in the context of literature research and necessary contribution? So a couple of things come to mind. This is actually really interesting work being done right now. Dr. John Brownstein, he's actually a professor at Harvard, and he's done some phenomenal work. What he's been able to do is he's been able to use social media as a platform to actually pick up necessary information for surveillance. So right now, what they've realized is that the surveillance models that we use currently are very slow to respond. So right now, we rely on the public health to know that people are having an outbreak, and by the time that outbreak is known and waiting for the tests for the microbiology to come back, that is a very slow way of actually predicting the outbreak, because you're already finding out when all the people and all the cases have actually started proliferating. So what John Brownstein and his team did at Harvard is they started analyzing Twitter and LinkedIn, and also looking at restaurant cancellations and general messaging around people saying that they're not feeling well. Based on this work, they've been able to actually use the web as well as social media platforms to harness public health surveillance. So it's actually taking public health surveillance to another level. This is actually another interesting study. This is the Journal of American Medical Association, and what they did here is, this is in 2005, just to show you that we've come a long way, but still this information holds true. What they noticed is, even in 2005, when they did surveillance and tried to interview a lot of people that were accessing healthcare in the US, they tried to find out what did they find as the most trustworthy source of health information. And the internet beat out everyone, including healthcare providers, which was very interesting, because in later studies, what they've been able to prove is that when you combine healthcare providers and the internet in the form of social media, then you actually have much larger influences in terms of what people find useful. All this to say is, again, as I'm saying, like, it's all about creating that need and understanding that without the presence of infection prevention control, in addition to other healthcare workers, you will not make the necessary impact that is required. Because clearly the patient is there and they're looking for this information. This is a complex looking graph and imagery, and I actually had a couple of guys have to explain this to me because I found it interesting. But what this shows is, it's actually showing you on this axis, let's take that pointer again, sorry, it's going to show you on this axis the number of tweets. So in general, the number of tweets over the timeline, which is the winter months here, there seems to be an increase in the number of tweets, as you can tell here, and tapering down here. And this was noted to be aligned with the sentiment of people as far as flu vaccination, as well as response to the pandemic in 2009. So what you're able to see here, and what is equally interesting, is that you're able to predict people's true opinion in terms of what they feel about a particular issue. So whether it's sensitive issues like smoking, sensitive issues like what they feel about hand hygiene, or even generally how they feel about the cleanliness of a facility, they might not be able to comfortably come and tell you to your face through normal surveillance or normal research interview methodology. But what they can do and what they're comfortable to do is they're actually comfortable to go online and actually echo those sentiments. So this is something that speaks to that and really talks to the need to be engaged on social media. So I do hope that right now, based on what we've seen in terms of history, and in terms of where we've come and where we're going, and in terms of the application in research, that you have a bit of an interest. So we definitely need you involved on this journey. This is an interesting. This is actually a real tweet that was put out, and I saw this I think last week. And as you might know, there's a huge anti-vaccination movement, right? So this was an anti-vaccine meme that came about. And I don't know if it's really clear on your end, but I'm going to try and explain it out. This is a child getting an injection. And it's interesting because a nurse seeing this on Facebook was able to then actually go in and say, "Hi, I am a nurse. You don't inject an infant in the deltoid ever." So I guess I agree with this meme. Don't let anyone shoot a half cup of apple juice into your baby's arm using the hard needle from Pulp Fiction. The whole point of this little thing was a healthcare worker was able to actually go in and retort and correct that this is not really what happened. This is not the application of the process. This is definitely pointing holes at the anti-vaccine movement. And at the end of the day, if you have healthcare workers there speaking to and addressing some of these qualms, you're able to raise true awareness. And I think even in the last couple of months, there's been a lot of talk around triclosan as well as other hand hygiene products that have interaction. And when you have healthcare workers and people that are infection control responding in a timely manner like this nurse did in this case, it actually adds a bit of credibility and tells people that washing hands is definitely still important. And the answer is not to wash your hands or use sanitizer, but the answer is just to inform yourself in greater detail as to what to use. So this is something that's critical in this particular case. The other thing that was interesting is I think there's a lot of patients that are now presenting with a lot of conditions. And I think what's equally important is patients are on social media and they are taking part significantly. There's this website called Patients Like Me. If you get a chance, please take a look at it. A lot of patients are actually now going on this site to connect with healthcare workers, to connect with patients like them. And what it's allowing them to do is to be more informed about their condition, to be more informed about the resources that are available, as well as to share research that's relevant in the area. So what they really like in this platform is to have the necessary expertise that's there. So there's many institutions now that are actually funding their doctors so that their doctors are visibly present in these settings. And any place that has that culture is seeing return on investment. I'll talk a little bit later about Mayo Clinic and what it's doing as far as their institution, but they are making significant headway in terms of what's going on. So let's go a little bit more what's in it for you, right? Switching gears, we've talked about the patient, we've talked about why it's important in the literature, but I think it's equally important to understand what's in it for you as the infection control practitioner or the person that works in healthcare. And this is the part that I have been working in infection control for a bit. One of the things I find interesting is every single time it always comes down that the healthcare worker always asks what's in it for me. So I always find it important to package that in there. So now let me talk about what's in it for you, all right? So I think a couple of key things come to mind here. So starting off from the top, social media allows you access to thought leadership, right? And what that generally means is anybody that is a leader in their craft and anybody that is doing phenomenal work is available on social media in a platform which they can share. So by being on there, you're actually allowing yourself to showcase yourself as well as your company or healthcare facility or your infection control chapter. You're allowing that sharing to exist. The other beauty about social media is, as I reflected with the Rolodex or LinkedIn's replacement now, is that you are able to keep track of your peers and colleagues. So when you want to see what's going on with Mayo Clinic, you're able to see. When you want to see what's going on with IPAC Canada, you're able to see what's going on with IPAC Canada because we're frequently posting on social media platforms. There's a couple of things as well around brand tracking and management, so you're able to show you what you're capable of. And this is critical because as we speak to how do you get started later on, this is going to be important for you to be able to identify what do you even share, what's important and what do you do and what are the first steps. Research and business decisions are also really, really on here. So I think one of the things that was interesting around the time of Ebola when everybody was trying to figure things out, World Health Organization was posting way more than they were. Also, World Health Organization was posting more on Twitter than they were posting on their website. Because to mobilize resources to post on the website might take long. But by the time they send a tweet, you're able to have a rough idea about what's going on. And why is that important? Well, when you're now faced with an organization that's looking at you as the infection prevention control practitioner to decide what is the strategic direction of an emerging threat, you need to have all the relevant pieces of information at your disposal. So what was useful around the time of Ebola, for example, is I actually then was able to improve the reliability of my information, which is down here, and inform a development strategy related to Ebola, as well as increase the speed of collaboration with key stakeholders. And one of the things that was useful around the Ebola time as well was you're able to then respond to World Health Organization and say, hey, I really don't understand this. Can I get more explanation on this? because they have people in communications that are there ready to respond to these things. They can actually direct your question furthermore to whoever is in there. And the nice thing about asking a question like that publicly sometimes is some of your other peers and stakeholders and people that you're engaging can actually then respond to you in your favor. So in my case, I was struggling really much about what kind of personal protective equipment to wear at the time. And I think a lot of people might have been going through the same challenge. What personal protective equipment to go with? There was many direction and feedback. So I was able to collaborate with other stakeholders, and some from as far as Malta were able to respond back and give me valuable insight in terms of which way to proceed. And this was all through the relationships that we established on social media. So I was able to accelerate the decision-making process through the peer input, and above all, I reduced significant travel costs, because I don't think my bosses would have been eager to let me go to Malta just to go and find out a bit about Ebola. So I think at the end of the day, you're able to use this as significant. And this is from a Society of New Communications research study, which looked at a lot of significant employees and people in healthcare, as well as trying to figure out what are some of the benefits of using social media. I hope you're convinced and you're thinking about how do I get started? I'm so eager here. Things you're seeing the benefits, and you can see how this can definitely help you. Well, so the key thing to ask yourself here is, and I intentionally put them all as one because they are all equally important, is you have to ask yourself as an individual, what makes you great, right? So that self-reflection is one way by you understand that we all have experiences and skills. And if I draw back again to the explanation of what social media is, it's important for you to realize that the things that we have done over the last couple of years, whether we've worked during SARS, whether we've experienced a lot of C. difficile cases, whether we have had significant outbreaks, whether we've implemented some measure of stool management within the healthcare setting, any of these things make you great, they make you unique, and they make your story compelling. So those are the things that you need to be factoring in and thinking about as you're deciding, okay, so what do I even share? What are some of the things that make me useful? So, as I said, social media is a combination of tools. Don't get too stuck up on the tool. The tools are just the adjunct to help you perform a task, which is really sharing of experiences and communicating some of these experiences as well as collaborating. So I've been to a lot of conferences that are IPAC Canada conferences. I met with a lot of you in infection control, and I've noticed that we all generally are able to connect. We're able to talk, we're able to share, so don't get stuck on the idea of social media being about the tools, but it's really about the ability to connect. So there's many tools that are available at your disposal in terms of what to do. Some of you might be familiar with things like YouTube, might be familiar with Instagram and Pinterest. I like these on this side of the equation. Like, I like them for like the novelty, the fun of sharing and gathering information through like YouTube, for example. But like as far as on the productive side, these are the ones that I actually tend to use a lot more. So in particular, I really love Twitter for sharing those quick messages and saying, this is what I see, this is what's going on. I really love LinkedIn part for sharing as far as the professional component. And then the Facebook is also another trick, and we have one of those. And then as I spoke about blogs earlier on, that's that. But as I said, for this particular session, it's critical for you to understand that we're going to focus most of our talk today on Twitter and LinkedIn. Going on to that, let's cross gears and talk a bit about LinkedIn. So what is LinkedIn and how can it help me? Well, first off, LinkedIn is the largest leading professional network on the web right now, right? So it allows you to connect with all the professional and personal as well, but it's the largest professional network available right now. You can also find and pursue your career passion by browsing profiles and connecting with professionals in your field. Interestingly, on LinkedIn, you can actually look up infection prevention control, and then you can actually stratify by location. So you can say Manitoba, and then you can actually see all the infection prevention control that are actually listed and are in Manitoba. And that what allows you to do is it allows you to see a face, it allows you to see a resume, and it allows you to have like that necessary dialogue and discussion. And if with some people, which is actually what's really interesting, is you can then tease out what is the area of interest. So some people really love construction, and you see them posting like CSA standards, discussions that they've had, buildings that they've been involved in. So you get to have a rough idea about what the people are into. Once again, because of that, it helps you build and maintain professional relationships, and it lets you turn professional relationships into opportunities. And especially now, as I said, with using the example of Ebola, when you now need to find out who is at Sunnybrook, by looking up at Sunnybrook, you're able to dive deeper and see what the infection control people, you're able to see what is the area of interest, and you're able to then connect in with those individuals and have those necessary conversations. So that's a key value, and that's a reason for you to join the groups in which you have interest and browse their group members, because there is even an IPAC Canada group. There's an infection control or hospital epidemiology group. There's an APIC group. So there's all these subgroups where you can actually have that tangible conversation and be able to share and have those valuable experiences. This here I've just shown is the LinkedIn page for IPAC Canada. When you're on there, you can actually click here where it says follow. You can actually see who else is connected. I see Chinggis here is also one of the editors of the FIJIC. You're able to see a bit of information. So this is the interface, and this is what it looks like. This is where you can actually see your messages, you see your face, like there's options in terms of what you can do. Remember when I spoke about searching, this is where you would type in the search bar, and then you can actually have that valuable stratification and look deeper into what's going on. So this is a little bit about what that LinkedIn feature would allow you to do. On LinkedIn, just like everywhere else, and even particularly important with healthcare, you have to be able to track and see your successes. What are you doing? What could you do differently? And how can you increase your level of engagement? So this, for example, is a screenshot of some of my profile, and I noticed that over the last little while, so I can actually see a little graph. So if you see the graph, this is a graph of engagement right here. So this is the number of people that I have had contact with all the way up to 102. So the peak I hit was 102 around the New Year's Eve time. And this is normally because obviously around that time, you're reaching out to people, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all that fun stuff. And then you get to do all these things. So you're able to see what are you doing differently. Are you endorsing other people? Are you adding connections? Are you commenting on updates, right? So this is a full contact sport. You're going in there and you have to be participating. So as much as you're actually posting information, you also have to be liking and feeding back off other people's information. So this is really the value of LinkedIn. So that is, in that particular case, what LinkedIn can do for you. I think we're crossing over gears here and talking a bit about Twitter and what Twitter is. So Twitter really is a micro-blogging application. So we talked about blogs before, but the micro piece here, drawing from microbiology, just means that instead of like being able to write essays, you're actually just writing 140 character limitations. So that's what makes Twitter interesting, because instead of being able to write volume, you're limited to 140 characters. So you have to really be succinct. So you could say there's many ways that you can actually go about writing that. I'll show you a sample of a tweet, for example, later on. And then in particular, you have the ability to follow influencers. So people in your field, when you type infection prevention control, you're able to see who those people are, and I will make recommendations as well later on, but you're able to see who those people are. Twitter allows you a great networking opportunity, and it also is a source for breaking information. So right now, I think I first heard about Zika virus when on Twitter, and all the developments that are coming up, including the subsequent new papers and so on, all that information just trickles in from there on Twitter. And it's interesting because even on our social media platforms for IPAC Canada, you will continuously see that we will post all that relevant information. So all the latest papers that are coming out and all the latest pieces of information, we'll be posting those on there too. So that is the value of being on Twitter. So Twitter is unique in the terms that it has its own unique jargon. It's got its own words that you will hear. So for example, you might have heard, and don't get scared of any of these things that you might hear. just like anything else that you start learning for the very first time, it's got its own culture, and you have to get into the culture to learn how things are done in that culture. So you will hear words like hashtag. So hashtag is just a way to actually categorize things. So if you go hashtag infection prevention and control, it means that anybody else that is searching for infection prevention and control will click that hashtag, and all the posts that are related to that will be showing up. So hashtag is a way to actually put in buckets so that you're able to group similar things together. And everything on Twitter has an @ so @ your name. So my Twitter handle, for example, will be @Barley Chironda. For IPAC Canada, we go with @IPAC Canada. When you're seeing something that you like and you want to share, you can actually just go in and do the retweet. So retweet is share something already tweeted. So you're just clicking a button, and I'll show what that looks like. And you might be asking yourself, why does all the abbreviations? And the reason for that is, if I say it's a microblog, you have 140 character limitation. So when you write retweet, you're actually taking up a couple words from that 140. So a lot of people really go with the RT, HT, and HT being a hat tip. So if you see somebody that does something nice, they share your post, you can go HT @IPAC Canada. So DM, you might have heard that in certain context, but DM just allows you to have a one-to-one conversation with someone. So you can send a direct message to that person. So for example, if I posted something and you wanted to ask me for clarification, but individual clarification, you can actually just send me a direct message, and that doesn't get shared to everyone. So there is still options of individual linear communication, and that does not require just broadcasting messages. CX is an interesting one because people do make mistakes, so it allows you to actually say correction and allows you to then say CX, by the way, it's 4 steps instead of 5 steps. So you can make a correcting thing. Tweet up is something that I really love. Whenever I go to conferences around the world, it's one of those things that really comes in very handy. Sometimes you go to a place where you don't know people, and then when they say tweet up, it's like interesting because people then come and meet up in real life. So you get physical meeting of Twitter. So that's nice because it breaks the ice, and then you don't have to be that awkward person just standing by yourself all shy. You're able to then meet up and connect with other people. So that's something that's important. So there are certain people that you already know that are participating on Twitter. The first image there just shows Chris Hadfield. He was ranked actually number 25 in terms of Twitter influence last year. And then just below him is Howie Mandel, also on Twitter. Comedian, does some funny stuff. And then generally, one of the leading people from a celebrity side that's on Twitter would be like, I think leading still in Canada will still be Justin Bieber at this point. But in my Justin Bieber's of my mind are the infection prevention control people. And here's an example of a screenshot from last year's IPAC Canada conference. So as much as people were having a beautiful time, there was a lot of Twitter activity that was going on. So if you notice on this side, get my little pointer here if I can get it going. On this side, you see top 10 by mention. So you get to see that IPAC Canada was mentioned the most. There was a lot of people love BHC. Actually, this is the president of IPAC in the UK called IPS. And coincidentally, their chapter, their prevention society was actually the second most. Then you had Shaheen, you had a couple of other people really there going in and actually sharing, being mentioned in the conference a lot. If you look at top tweets, there's a lot of other people that were actually sharing tweets. And this is where you get to see the advantages or disadvantages of having a name. So for example, you can have a name like Bacillus ICP, who is an ICP at Rouge Valley, or you can have a name like Stefania Kluche, where it's self-identified. And each has its pros and cons, but from a healthcare perspective, you can make that decision in terms of what works best in your favor, because each has its pros and cons as well. So let's talk a little bit about how to tweet here. So this is a screenshot from my Twitter account. And then what you can actually see from here is you can see the option to actually click tweet. So once you've signed up for an account, you've taken a picture of yourself that self-identifies you, you've given a little bit of a blurb about who you are, you can actually then just click tweet. But before you do that, the option that I find most interesting is better to follow a couple of people that are influencers. So, for example, on this screen, you can see that I am following NHS, I'm following infection control tips. But by following these stakeholders, you're able to just keep in pulse on what's going on. So by doing that, you're staying in the loop. And that gives you an opportunity now to actually rope in any other discussions that you can have. But let's say you now get to the stage of comfort, you can actually now go in and say tweet. So when you go in and click tweet, it opens up as such. So it opens up a little screen that will say compose a new tweet. So for example, I was going to say, I love sharing about infection control, and I can then CC, which is to cover and copy. Once again, those little acronyms to save the character spaces. And every single time you're typing something, you can see the little box here. It tells you how many words are left at your disposal. So I have 61 more words. That's sort of characters. So I have to be very creative with my characters because even the space counts as a character. So I've copied IPAC Canada, I've copied East Korea, I've copied Methuselah Diwan. These are 2 ICPs, by the way. One is from Markham Stouffville, one is from Markham Stouffville and Scarborough General. So you're able to now create dialogue around sharing with other people. Then when you're done with that, you can actually just click tweet, and then that shares out. And what that does, it sends an alert to these people, and then dialogue and conversation exists. So this is valuable to go about using. This is actually something that I noticed last week. I happened to be traveling in Montreal, and I followed CBC alerts, and an alert came up around the health officials saying women with TB took a megabus from Montreal to Toronto via Kingston on August 20th and returned August 23rd. This is critical information from infection prevention control perspective. So when I saw this, I then retweeted it out and I shared it out. So all I just did was I clicked this little button here, and then that allowed that information to be shared out to other people as well. And then another little piece was just down here. Study comes out with lessons learned on successful Ebola patient management. So that was a link that I just shared, and then you're able to have those cross functions. And what's interesting is on here, you can see that the little thing says LNKD. What it's actually telling you is that the link was actually shared from LinkedIn. So there's ways to simplify your work, and I think maybe we'll figure out a strategy around how maybe later webinars can really be more about how to be more hands-on and how we can actually do this more hands-on. But like you have an option to actually share straight from LinkedIn onto your Twitter, so you don't duplicate work. So interestingly, of all my tweets, I always try and figure out what am I doing well. So I was just looking in the last week, and I noticed that one of the tweets that I actually did for York Region Government, where we shared our Infection Control Education Day, had 1,021 impressions. 18 people engaged around that. So it lets me know when is my most activity. So this is good because you get to feed yourself good practice. So it's like almost like a positive affirmation. The more you do it, the more you look at your analytics, the more you're able to see how you can do a better job. So continuously doing that is really good. We're now on social media. I'm assuming that I've convinced a couple of people to realize that this is a good thing to do. So there's a couple of rules. Just like everything else, when you're going to learn how to drive a car, there's rules for that. When you're going to get into a particular profession, there's rules and code of conduct. So what are the rules and code of conduct when it comes to be on social media, right? So first off, I think it's critical. This came from John Hayden, who's the founder of Inbound Zombie, which is like a marketing Facebook author. He authored the book, Facebook Marketing for Dummies. And he says, be useful and indispensable, right? So this is important to take away because at the end of the day, like your utility and how you give value is what makes people want to follow and view what you're sharing. And the other key thing is, if you were to put anything up there, if you wouldn't show it or say it to your grandma, then don't send it. So you really have to be conscious to the value of what you send. So whatever you send has to be reflective and unbiased, and has to be really thoughtful of the audience and where it's going. Because once you put it out there, unfortunately, you cannot delete it. So this, to me, I think is a very critical message, and a lot of organizations are struggling with it. But I spoke a bit about Mayo Clinic a little bit before, and this is very teeny. medical director of Mayo Clinic. And this is honestly one of the leading organizations at the moment in terms of use of social media. And what they really have is a 12-word policy. This is all they have when it comes to social media. Don't lie, don't pry, don't cheat, can't delete, don't steal, and don't reveal. So this is really going to speak to all those words around privacy and confidentiality, the stealing and cheating, all fairness and all those other things. And at the end of the day, this is really all they have when it comes to their social media policy. So it really helps people to stick to the principles. And to me, honestly, these are the same guiding words that I have. But you always also want to be familiar with whatever organizations you have you are aligned with. So in my case, I have social media rules on the IPAC Canada side that I have to also follow. So you also have to be following all those rules to make sure that you're in alignment. And I'll say the same thing for your employers as well. Because some employers might actually want you to identify that you're an employee of the organization and state that all views are your own. So that's something that's also important, and you'll see that mentioned in a couple of things. So once you're in the role and you're using this stuff, there's various ways of level of engagement, and you really get what you put in, right? So if you're not putting any time, you get nothing, right? So you're probably where you started off, and so on. If you just open an account and do nothing with it, then once again, you get nothing. So this is also speaking to the levels of engagement that are required. If you have very little time, then Twitter is for you. You can just re-like, and then you can just reshare, or you can just read and just watch what's going on. If you have a little bit more time, like Facebook and so on, you're seeing in the hours are increasing in terms of the hours in the day there, right? If you have lots of time, you can go nuts and you can run a website on your own, you can run a community. So this is really the range of what you can do as far as like what's going on. But most people I see are in the participant stage where they're posting, sharing, liking, and so on, and it's only typically a 1 hour commitment, which honestly you can break that down to commute, to a little bit of your break time. There's many options that you can use in terms of what that looks like. So the other thing that's important is when you're sending out an image or sending out a message, try and use power words. And these are some power words suggested. And this slide will be made available to you, but like try and put in something like basic or extraordinary or immediately. Once again, this is important because in infection control, all our work that we do is all about implementation science. It's all about converting people. It's about change management. It's about buy-in. So nothing says that more than the messaging. So as you put the message out there, you are utilizing these power words, you're able to get much more traction and you're able to do more. This is an interesting slide because I think what I've just tried to do here is I try to put some people that I think you should start off by following if you're not following anyone at the moment, or even if you are, still these are good people to follow. General Chuko, he's an ID doctor that's out of Lake Ridge. He does a lot of phenomenal work and shares around C. difficile management as well as antimicrobial stewardship. You've got John Otter, who's out of the NHS. He's the professor at King College in the UK, and he does a lot of talks around environmental services, disinfection, and a couple of other things. I put this guy on because this is actually very interesting. This is Malcolm Stover, infection prevention control team. They've started their own little Twitter account where they can actually share out information with their community. So they are able to tell them what's going on when the emergency department is closed, what's going on as far as vaccinations, and when many other infection prevention control things. So this is actually a very nice group to follow, so you can actually see if you want to start one of your own, they can share that information in terms of what they have done. I've also put in IPAC Canada because obviously it would be remiss if we did not mention that because this is a useful tool. A lot of work goes in here. Kelly, Jerry are posting things on here as well as myself, and we have a lot of valuable information that's on there. So if you were on IPAC Canada last night or the day before, you might have seen that there has been an inclusion by CBIC that allows the exam to be taken in French, and that is a valuable piece of information, and once again, it's posted on the link. So you can take a look at that and be familiar with that. I also want to just say, please, there's an opportunity for you to follow us. You can follow us on LinkedIn at IPAC Canada. You can follow us on Twitter at IPAC Canada as well. And there's an opportunity to follow us on Facebook on IPAC Canada. So these are the definite platforms that you can actually follow us on. And as I say, the level of engagement that you can start out is there's many ways to actually get involved. You can start off with this very small commitment of like 30 minutes to an hour a day, broken down in chunks, of course, so you can be able to just put in that time so that you can see what you can do, and then you can grow that as you get more involved. And as you see more return on investment, you can get it down to the continuum where we're saying the goal nut stage, where you can now actually control data and you can actually be able to do a lot of things. And this is actually interesting because I saw this and I was like, no, I got to figure out how to use it. So this is good. And it says start small. And remember, Coca-Cola only sold 25 bottles their first year. So keep going because Coke did it and you can do too. At the end of the day, just those baby steps and just getting involved bit by bit as you grow stuff. So don't try and chew off a lot. Just try and take those little baby steps as you get your feet wet. And there's many ways to reach out. I think my details are shared on the first slide. There's many other stakeholders that I've listed here, and I think there's way more that I've held back on that I can actually share. But I think at the end of the day, it's critical just to try it out and see what that looks like, and just start small. So I think I wanted to end with this slide here. This is how I attend. This is a tweet that I sent out, and this is me attending the IPAC conference from the comfort of my living room. Pretty much, I was asked by IPAC to participate in a session that they were having, and I couldn't travel at the time. And it was funny because out of that necessity of not being able to be there, we decided, okay, I could probably just log in from home and be able to do that. So I ended up participating from Twitter and my pajamas and stuff, watching things. So this is one of the things that I found that's very useful, where you have so many applications and so many options related to social media. And it's just a technology piece, but what's really critical, as I said from the very beginning, is that communication piece. So your expertise should not be compromised by other barriers. So you can still reach out and still communicate and still work with people even remotely. With that, I think that comes to the end of my slides. And I think we might have a bit of time here for questions. I'll take direction from Jerry and Doug in terms of how we can proceed.